2507 returned to the scene of the crime. Soon enough, Mordred was leaving the manor in one of his luxurious cars. It used to be that 2 escort vehicles were assigned to his security detail, but because of the recent incident, there were 4 of them now, 1 driving ahead, 1 guarding the rear, and 2 flanking his car from both sides. The new chauffeur had not been vetted yet, so Mordred's assistant was behind the wheel for now. "Where to, sir?" Fastening his seat belt, Mordred contemplated for a few moments, then said in a somewhat tense tone. The hospital where Morgan was being kept. Let's get there as soon as possible." The assistant nodded, accelerating slightly. They drove along the lake shore for a while. The sun rose higher and higher, but the gray twilight enveloping Mirage City seemed to only grow dimmer. The stormy clouds fused into an impenetrable veil, discharging heavy torrents of rain ceaselessly. Still, Mordred could see the vague silhouette of the great castle towering above the water in the distance. "I should check how the preparations for the grand opening of Mirage Museum are going." The opening was not going to happen for quite some time, though. For now, he had more pressing matters to worry about. As if reading Mordred's thoughts, the assistant spoke from the driver's seat. "Sir, I forwarded the Flood Prevention Initiative report to your personal inbox, as requested. Things seem to be going well." Mordred looked away from the window and stared ahead in confusion for a couple of moments. Then, he smiled faintly. "Oh, thank you." Picking up a tablet from the mahogany desk built into the interior of the car, he accessed the report and immersed himself in reading. It was fortunate that he had a little work to do on the way, that way, at least, there was something to distract him from his worries. "I wonder how long it will take to reach the hospital." Some of the roads were flooded, while others were congested. It was hard to say for sure. After a while, Mordred sighed. "This can't be right. Who checked these numbers?" The assistant looked at him through the rearview mirror. "Oh, I was surprised, too." However, Valor Construction had already been mobilizing its forces in preparation for the reconstruction contracts that would follow after the floods. And they seemed to still have some surplus materials left after finishing up the dam restoration project. That was a big commission, as you know. They've been waiting for a new flagship project since then. Mordred nodded. "I see." Then, he shook his head. "Still, there must be a mistake in the report. Get me the original copy, on paper, and let's order a minor audit of Valor Construction while we're at it. We are going to be working closely with the City Hall in the next few months, so it's better to prepare in advance and have all the numbers at hand." The assistant nodded. "I will arrange it, sir." Mordred sighed and looked out the window once again. So many things were happening. Nothing had been happening for a long while, and now, everything seemed to be happening at once. The other was here. He actually came back. Morgan was behaving strangely. And then, there were the detectives. Actually, their presence. "No, don't think about it. Don't." The assistant looked at him strangely. "Did you say something, sir?" Mordred offered him a pleasant smile. "No, let's hurry." Soon enough, they arrived at the hospital. The water was rising in this part of town, close to the northern dam, but the barricade of sandbags surrounding the building seemed to be holding for now. Workers in yellow raincoats were still scurrying to reinforce it, some wading through the water to drag the new sandbags from a truck that had broken down on the flooded parking lot. It was a lively scene. There was even a street musician playing a simple melody under a makeshift awning that the workers had raised. "Please wait a few moments, sir. I'll find a dry place to park the car." The escort vehicle stopped first, letting out a small crowd of bodyguards. The assistant opened the door and held up an umbrella. Climbing out of the car, Mordred looked around and headed toward the hospital with confident steps. "Oh, go give that musician me change, and order hot meals and coffee to be delivered to the workers." The assistant disappeared with a bow. Entering the lobby, Mordred stumbled a little, and looked ahead with a stunned expression. There were 2 people waiting for him. The director of the hospital, he knew. Next to him, however, Mordred was more or less the most powerful and wealthy man in Mirage City. Due to the nature of his position, he had met and interacted with most of the local prominent figures, politicians, titans of industry, spiritual leaders, and the brightest stars of the art world, as well, actors and actresses, runway models, incandescent idols of the musical stage. But he had never once seen anyone as stunning as the woman standing silently next to the hospital director. Mordred had really considered himself immune to being stunned by someone's beauty, but at the moment, he found it hard to hide his shock. Wow. Still, his bafflement only lasted a second. A heartbeat later, he regained his composed expression. That composure was only outward, though, inwardly, his emotions were still in turmoil. Who can she be? The director bowed slightly, looking at him with a familiar sycophantic smile. Mr. Mordred, welcome. I wish that there was a more auspicious reason for your visit, but sadly, well, it is what it is. Oh, and this is Dr. Saint. She was in charge of Miss Morgan's treatment, so she would know best about your sister's mental state. Mordred blinked a few times. Your name is Saint, how fitting. He smiled. The stunning psychiatrist simply looked at him without saying anything. The absolute indifference of her gaze made him feel a little. Actually, Mordred did not even know how to describe how it made him feel. All he knew was that he vastly preferred her aloof disregard to the director's obvious desire to please. No one has ever treated me that way before. 2508 stone cold. After studying the beautiful psychiatrist closer, Mordred noticed how tired and worse for wear drive. Saint looked. There were bruises on her eerily beautiful face, her clothes were wrinkled under the white lab coat, and one of her hands was bandaged tightly. A concerned frown found its way onto his face against his will. I am sorry. Morgan, were you hurt? Dr. Saint remained silent for a few moments, then cast a cold glance at the members of his retinue. After hesitating a little, she frowned and said in a sonorous, enthralling voice. Can we speak in private, Mr. Mordred? It took him a few seconds to come to his senses after hearing her voice and realize that she had asked him a question. Mordred stared at the beautiful psychiatrist for a bit, then looked at his bodyguards. Wait here. He gave the director a signal to remain in the lobby, as well. Dr. Saint nodded. Then, follow me. Turning around, she headed into the depths of the hospital, unlocking several doors with her keycard as they went. Is something the matter, Drive? Saint, I am quite concerned about my sister. I was under the impression that she had been receiving the best treatment here, but the next thing I knew, she vanished. What exactly happened? She glanced at him over her shoulder. Last night, Miss Morgan escaped after killing a nurse and 3 orderlies. Mordred flinched. What? That? Why wasn't I informed? Uncle Maddock had not mentioned anything about someone having been killed. Dr. Saint sighed. She claims that they were assassins who infiltrated the hospital by posing as staff in order to kill her. Usually, I would have said that Miss Morgan is suffering from paranoid personality disorder, and she might be, but in this case, I am really not sure. Still shocked, Mordred nodded. Yes, Morgan is not someone who would hurt people. I mean, she has never hurt anyone. Are you sure that she killed someone? Then, his eyes widened a little. Wait, you said that she claims to have killed them. Meaning that you were in contact with her. Dr. Saint nodded again. Yes, in fact, she seemed to hesitate for a while, then added with a hint of reluctance. I can take you to her. Just then, Mordred realized that he had no idea where they were. He had been too distracted by Dr. Saint's breathtaking beauty at first and the shocking news about Morgan later. The two of them had left the more crowded parts of the hospital and were now in some kind of service area. The air was cold and humid, and there was a thin layer of water on the floor. Mordred looked around in confusion. I am sorry, but where are we going? Instead of answering, Drive. Saint simply beckoned for him to follow. They took a few turns, ascended a set of stairs, and ended up in front of a chained door. There, Drive. Saint stopped and gave him a complicated look. Suddenly finding himself face to face with her, gazing into her eyes, Mordred coughed and took a step back in embarrassment. I am sorry, but is there something on my face? She remained silent for a while longer, then said evenly. Mr. Mordred, I am a person who values orderly and reasonable things. However, the situation we find ourselves in is disorderly and irrational, distasteful, really. So, we can only follow our instincts and do what we think is best. Mordred blinked a few times. What is she? Dr. Saint sighed again. What I mean to say is that I will not let things get out of hand. If you feel too uncomfortable, give me a signal, and I'll find a way to stop all of this. Mordred stared at her silently for a few moments with no expression on his face. Behind the composed facade, however, he was anything but calm. Eventually, he asked, do you mean, like, a safe word? The stunning psychiatrist frowned, looked at him for a moment, then turned away to unlock the door while ignoring his question completely. Beyond it was the street running along the utility annex of the hospital. The rain was pouring from the gray sky, and streams of water were flowing through the small gaps in the hastily assembled sandbag barricade. The workers were hastily trying to plug the holes, and a lone security guard was hiding from the rain under the canopy. Mordred looked past the barricade, though. There, a ramshackle black car with a cracked windshield was parked in the middle of the street, with two people leaning against it leisurely. The detectives. Mordred raised his eyebrows. Detective Sunless. Detective Athena, what are you doing here? Detective Athena smiled. Oh, we just happened to be in the neighbor OOD. Detective Sunless smiled, as well. We're kidnapping you. His partner gave him a startled look. What? Hey, what happened to the plan? Weren't we going to lure him into the car peacefully? He cleared his throat, then offered her a shrug. Well, he asked. Mordred stared at them with an odd expression. Huh, wait, so drive, Saint. Suddenly, he wanted to fall through the ground. Mordred lingered for a few moments, then shook his head slightly. Oh, I am terribly sorry, detectives, but it would be very inconvenient for me to get kidnapped at the moment. I have to find my sister, you see, my parents are also visiting, there are floods in the city, and I need to plan a museum opening as well. So, with all due respect, once again, I am truly sorry, I will have to refuse. Mordred would have obliged the detectives some other time, but he was otherwise engaged today. So, he was not going to humor them. They could have just scheduled an appointment. Mordred offered them a polite smile. It was then that he felt something cold press against his back, and heard the sound of a pistol hammer being cocked. Looking over his shoulder, Mordred saw Dr. Saint looking at him with her beautiful, glistening eyes. One could drown in those eyes, but it seemed that she was holding a revolver against his back. The beautiful psychiatrist sighed, then winced in displeasure. Ally, now, I must have lost my mind, too. She took a deep breath. Anyway, please get into the car, Mr. Mordred. You are being kidnapped, we are kidnapping you. Mordred tilted his head a little. On second thought, I can go for a ride. 2509 Humble CEO. Single quote. Huh, Sunny knew that Saint had agreed to cooperate with them. Someone was trying to kill her, after all, and the two deranged detectives seemed to be the only thing standing between her and an early demise. He had also harbored no doubt that she would be able to separate the other Mordred from his security and lure the poor fool to this secluded service entrance. What Sunny had not expected, however, was that she would nonchalantly point a gun at the CEO of the Valor Group and tell him to get into the car in an even tone, not that he was going to complain. Go Saint. The workers and the lone security guard did not seem to have noticed the gun yet. Interestingly enough, they weren't turning into glassy-eyed zombies yet, either, which was not that hard to explain. It was perfectly in character for a hot-headed detective with a grudge to forcefully take away a suspected murderer for interrogation. It was also in character for his inexperienced partner to go along with the plan. Usually, one of them would have been a maverick, while the other would have loved to do everything by the book. Both the other Mordred was out of luck. The detective duo he had invited into his life were both slightly unhinged. Apparently, it was also perfectly in character for Dr. Saint to point guns at people, as long as she considered it a reasonable development. With haste, Mr. Mordred, if you will. Sunny opened the passenger door and invited Mordred into the PTV. The luxuriously dressed CEO gave the old vehicle a dubious glance, then obediently climbed inside. Effie and Saint took the backseat while he looked around the ragged interior with a curious smile. How quaint. Detective Sunless, are you perchance an antique collector? Sunny, who had just put his hands onto the wheel, gave him a scathing glare. This guy. No, I'm just poor. Buckle up. Starting the PTV, he drove off at high speed. As the tires clung desperately to the wet asphalt, Sunny glanced at his passenger, remained silent for a moment, and said, please make no mistake. Technically, we might be kidnapping you, but it is for your own safety. We have reasons to believe that there will be another attempt on your life, and we can't trust your subordinates. So, you might as well think about it as being taken into protective custody. No hard feelings, yes. The other Mordred smiled and assented too easily. Yes. Sunny frowned. Why was he being so accommodating? A powerful CEO was supposed to be arrogant and domineering, sort of like Morgan had been before the fall of Valor. Imagining trying to force her into a PTV made Sunny shiver. But since Mordred was being so amicable, Sunny glanced at him, and then asked in a neutral tone, how's that seat belt treating you? Comfortable. That's good. I'm not that comfortable, sadly, because my seat belt is pressing against a stab wound on my side. I've been stabbed, you see. Oh, do you want to know who stabbed me? He turned his head a little and smiled darkly. I bet it was the same man who stabbed your driver to death. My, oh my, does he not like the idea of anyone driving you around? The other Mordred met his gaze with a pleasant expression. I'm afraid I don't understand what you are talking about, detective. Sunny scoffed. Sure you don't. You did not probe to see whether my partner is really who she seems to be, either. Right, Mordred blinked a few times. I'm afraid I do not follow. Whatever do you mean? Sunny grinned. Cut the crap, would you? We know. We also know that you know. So, how about we have an honest conversation? About your other self, and where both of you come from, the real world. Mordred looked at him in utter confusion. I am, truly sorry, detective. I'm afraid I still can't grasp your meaning. Saint did not say anything, but Sunny could read what she wanted to blurt out from her expression, captured in the rearview mirror. Finally, a sane person. He pursed his lips. What is the point of playing games if everything is already in the open? If you are afraid to be a character, don't be. Everyone in this car is real. You are the axis of Mirage City. Anyway, the Castellan will probably change the Palace of Imagination to fit whatever you deem to acknowledge instead of punishing you for it. Mordred's pleasant smile grew a little forced. I am not playing games, detective. I am simply at a loss. You seem to be confused about something. Sunny threw a dark look at Effie, who just shrugged. I don't get why he's being that way, either. There's no reason to, unless there is something we are missing. Both of them looked at Saint. She shifted uncomfortably under their gazes. Have you considered that it is your actions that are abnormal, as opposed to Mr. Mordred's reaction? Sunny and Effie glanced at each other. Nope, never crossed my mind. Saint sighed. By then, the PTV had left the quiet neighborhood where the hospital was located and driven onto a freeway. Sunny pressed the pedal down, accelerating as he weaved between other vehicles. Mordred's security had to have discovered his disappearance by now. If all had gone as planned, they would have no chance to pursue, but it was still a good idea to hurry away. At that moment, Effie's communicator rang. She answered the call and listened to it for a few moments, then grimaced. Hey, Sunny, I have good news and bad news. He raised an eyebrow. Was that Morgan? She nodded. Yes. The good news is that we gave Mordred's bodyguards a slip. Sunny frowned. That is the bad news, then. Turning around, Effie looked back, at the swiftly moving expanse of the freeway. It seems like he had been followed from a distance by several unmarked cars. And unlike his security detail, these cars are already on our tail. Looking into the rearview mirror, Sunny sighed. Yeah, I know. I've been keeping an eye on them since we reached the freeway. Mordred raised an eyebrow. We are being followed. By whom? Sunny studied him for a moment, then shook his head. Who else? People who want to kill you, of course. 2510 high octane. Sunny could see 3 cars rushing through traffic to catch up to them, which did not mean that there weren't more. All 3 were nondescript and unassuming, but at the moment, they looked quite menacing. He sighed. Doesn't make much sense, does it? The other Mordred, who seemed oddly relaxed despite the threat to his life, lingered for a few moments and asked in a curious tone. What doesn't make sense? Exactly. Sunny frowned. None of it makes any damn sense. By now, they knew that there was a larger conspiracy hiding behind the seemingly random nihilist killings. Still, the first 7 victims had been killed by the same lunatic. Their missing eyes hinted at that, at least. However, there was also the driver of the truck who had pushed Mordred's car into the river, as well as all the assailants from last night. And now, there's meant to be a large coordinated force trying to finish the job. Sunny grimaced. Hold on tight. This might be a bumpy ride. Pressing the pedal to the floor, he threw the PTV forward. Ack. Saint grabbed the assist grip and looked at him darkly. Detective Sunless, where did you learn to drive? Sunny grinned. The war-torn reaches of Antarctica. Spinning the wheel, he managed to just barely squeeze the PTV between 2 speeding vehicles and change lanes. With a bit of free road in front of him, he accelerated even more. The rain was pelting the cracked windshield, and the wipers were drowning as they fruitlessly tried to clear it. It was practically impossible to see what was ahead, and the headlights of the vehicles around them fused into red and white blurs. His black PTV raced across the freeway at a speed that would have usually been negligible to Sunny, but was now terrifying. The black vehicles roared, as if welcoming the mad race. It was met with outraged horns of surrounding PTVs, which fell behind in a matter of moments. Sunny weaved between lanes, taking over one vehicle after another with risky maneuvers. Their pursuers, sadly, were doing the same. He glanced into the rearview mirror briefly. Do you know, guys? He threw the PTV in front of a heavy truck, managing to swerve onto an exit ramp at the last moment. The curve of the ramp was too steep, however, and the left side of the black vehicles was stripped bare of a layer of paint as it slid along the concrete barrier with an ear-piercing screech. Recovering from being jostled, Sunny sent the PTV onto the streets of Mirage City and smiled. This one time, my APC drove through a horde of nightmare creatures on a coastal highway, maneuvering between carriages of a derailed train, while a sinking battleship bombarded the mountains above us with artillery fire. There was the sound of something crashing behind them, and a car shattered the concrete barrier, falling from a height in a rain of debris. A moment later, it hit the asphalt and rolled, crashing into the wall of a nearby building as a pile of bent metal. But another car was already rushing down the ramp, eager to catch up with them. The other Mordred forced out a pale smile. I don't really understand half of what you said, Detective. But you must be an incredible driver. Sunny glanced at him in confusion. What? Oh, I wasn't the one driving. To be honest, I am not even certified as a vehicle operator. With that, he spun the wheel, sent the car drifting around a narrow corner, and accelerated again to climb a steep hill. The pedestrians crossing the road rushed away in a panic at the sight of the speeding car. Sunny's PTV crested the top of the hill at high speed and was airborne for a few moments, then crashed heavily into the asphalt and continued forward, cutting through the layer of water flowing down the sloping road. In any case, behind them, two pursuing cars soared from behind the hill. Landing with a bit more grace than the black vehicle, they accelerated, almost catching up to him. Sunny swerved his PTV left and right, trying to prevent them from taking over. I guess we are lucky that the devil detective drove automatic. Sort of out of character for him, don't you think? Not that I really know what a stick shift is, or what a shift is. It's just that there's a lot of nonsense about that in his memo. GYs. One of the cars managed to get past him, after all. It sped up and came to ride side by side with the black PTV. Behind its windows, dark shapes were moving. Not giving the pursuers a chance to do anything, Sunny spun the wheel and crashed the side of his vehicle into the enemy. He groaned slightly, being rattled by the impact, and struggled to maintain control. The other vehicle was only pushed aside a little, but that little was enough to throw it into the concrete divider. The damage was catastrophic, and the vehicle was almost cut in half. A split second later, it was far behind, out of sight. One left. Sadly, the last pursuer was moments away from running Sunny's PTV off the road. Looking at the side mirror, he briefly noticed the other Mordred. That guy was smiling brightly while holding for dear life. Sunny suppressed the desire to curse. You, what the hell are you so happy about? The other Mordred looked at him with an excited glint in his odd mirror-like eyes. Sorry, it's just exactly like in the books I used to read. A high-speed chase with our lives on the line. So exciting. Sunny stared at him silently for a moment, then hurriedly turned back to the road. Single quote ... And he had the nerve to put Morgan into an asylum. That lunatic. He flew across an intersection on a red light, barely avoiding being hit by the rushing traffic. Sunny had hoped that the last pursuer would be less fortunate, but the enemy car passed the intersection with no trouble, with only bystander vehicles ending up losing control and smashing into each other. They were not going too fast, at least, so the passengers would only receive minor injuries. By then, Sunny had reached the bottom of the hill. He turned at the last second, sending the car onto the raised pavement. The pursuer, however, reacted a little too slowly. As a result, the PTV drove straight into the deep puddle at the bottom of the hill, burrowing into the water deep enough for its engine to be flooded. Sunny's PTV had to struggle against the flooded area, as well, but the water was far shallower on the edges of the street. Barreling through the rows of crates and a few trash bins, Sunny swerved back onto the road and looked at Mordred with a dark smile. How's that? Exciting enough for you? Just then, they reached the next intersection. And a moment later, a fourth vehicle appeared out of the rain, crashing into the side of the black PTV at full speed.